Did something happen between you and Mrs. Toth?
It wasn't me.
It's enough. You come in here making vague, laughable accusations. I want you out of our house this instant.
Tell them what you did to my husband.
Buried in the cold geometry of the Brutalist lies a cipher, a whispering of something older. Could this man be more than a human? The lines between myth and modernity blur, and in the shadows of architecture and silence, a forgotten god might be building his legacy in drab concrete. Could it be that the main character of this iconic movie is actually the rebirth of an Egyptian god? I'm talking about Laszlo Thoth from the 2004 film The Brutalist. It's more than just a film, it's a deep story full of hidden layers, powerful silence, and symbols that reach all the way back to ancient times. The Brutalist is a visually striking and emotionally heavy movie directed by Brady Corbett, starring the talented Adrian Brody. But here's the interesting part. This architecture movie isn't just about buildings or trauma. The main character, Thoth, could be a modern-day version of an ancient god. Sounds wild, right? What's up, Stinkfart Movie Land? It's your boy, Mad Murph. We're going to compare Laszlo Thoth to Thoth, the Egyptian god of writing and wisdom. There are so many symbolic connections between these two, and once you notice them, you won't be able to unsee them. Hit that stink subscribe button and follow the channel, because I've got a ton of farty movie comparisons coming up in the next couple of weeks. So, who is Laszlo Thoth? And who is the god Thoth? We need to analyze them separately first, and then we can bring them together. Thoth, a Hungarian Jewish architect who survives World War II and later starts a new life in America, is a man of very few words. In fact, throughout the movie, he hardly speaks at all. But you don't need him to talk because his buildings say everything. His work that's made from heavy, raw concrete is filled with emotion even if it looks cold on the outside. After reaching America, Thoth reunites with his cousin Attila, who has already established a modest life in America and helps Thoth settle in. Despite the prestigious background in architecture, Thoth finds himself working at Attila's furniture store while desperately trying to locate his wife and his young niece who are still in Europe. One day, Attila and Thoth are hired to renovate a library, but the job ends abruptly without payment. Feeling violated, Attila asks Thoth to leave his home. With no support system and little money, Thoth spirals into homelessness and addiction, living in charity housing and working low-paying jobs. Months later, a wealthy man named Harrison tracks Thoth down after discovering and admiring some of his architectural drawings. He pays Thoth's debt and offers him a life-changing opportunity to design a grand public building. With Harrison's sponsorship, Thoth is finally able to bring his wife and niece to America. However, his wife is wheelchair-bound due to bone disease, and the niece is nearly mute because of the trauma she has faced. As construction on the building progresses, Thoth grows more successful and begins to attract attention in architectural circles. However, Harrison isn't the saint that he seems to be. Firstly, he makes inappropriate moves towards the young niece, and then he sexually assaults Thoth while being heavily drunk. This traumatic betrayal shatters their professional and personal relationship. Thoth's wife is fed up with American culture and discrimination and finally decides to leave. She moves to Israel with her niece, but Thoth stays behind to complete the buildings. Decades after the project's completion, an older Thoth visits an expedition that honors his life's work. There, his niece gives a public speech reflecting on her uncle's legacy. She reveals that beneath the stark minimalist aesthetic of his work, Thoth encoded the memory of trauma, loss, and survival. The film ends on a contemplative note exploring the weight of history, the immigrant experience, and the hidden cost of building a life in a foreign land. This brings us to the much deeper part of the story. Thoth might not just be a man. He could represent something much older and bigger. Was his name taken from the Egyptian history that describes a god? In ancient Egyptian mythology, Thoth plays a very important role. He's not one of the flashy gods with big battles or temples, but his role is deeply spiritual and powerful. Thoth was an important god in ancient Egyptian religion, known as the god of knowledge, wisdom, writing, and magic. People believed he created writing and taught humans how to read and keep records, so he was seen as a protector of scribes, students, and knowledge. He played a big role in keeping balance in the universe and was often called the scribe of the gods because he wrote everything down that happened, including the decisions made by other gods. In the afterlife, Thoth helped judge people's souls by recording the results of the weighing of the heart ceremony, which decided if someone could go to the afterlife. Egyptians respected Thoth for his intelligence, fairness, and power to keep order in the world. In short, he was a god who made sure nothing was forgotten and that justice was served. Sounds like a pretty chill dude, right? The Egyptian Thoth wrote using symbols on stone and on walls. He didn't just write stories for fun, he wrote the truth. He kept records of life and death, of justice and injustice. What he wrote was etched in stone, preserved through time and the continuous evolution of the species. Now, think about Thoth from the Brutalist. He also doesn't write with a pen and paper. He writes with buildings. His architecture is his language. And just like the Egyptian Thoth's writings, Laszlo Thoth's structures carry truth. Brutalism involves simplified and block-like concrete buildings. They were initially introduced to cut down construction costs, but the artists have a different vision about this. They believe that brutalism actually depicts harmony and equality among societies, which Laszlo Thoth wanted to achieve in America. Unfortunately, his dreams were shattered and his thoughts were limited to his buildings. When you look at a building designed by Thoth in the film, it feels heavy. It feels serious. It's not trying to be beautiful in the usual way. It's trying to speak, to say something about memory, about suffering, about what we must never forget. This is where architecture becomes kind of writing on stones, a sacred form of expression. Another big connection between Egyptian Thoth and Laszlo Thoth is how both deal with memory and trauma. Thoth, as the god of judgment and record, was responsible for keeping track of people's lives. He remembered everything, even the traumatic things others wanted to forget. And those stones he wrote on will stay there for a long time telling stories he witnessed. On the other hand, in the Brutalist, Laszlo Thoth also can't run away from his past. He carries it with him. He didn't write down his past in words, but his expressions into the concrete buildings that he designed tell a story. In the movie, it was also highlighted that Thoth's buildings were quite long-lasting, so it's not easy for him to erase that traumatic past. But this gives the film its actual beauty. Thoth is a Holocaust survivor, and instead of burying that pain, he turns it into art. But not the kind of art that you hang on the wall. This art you walk through, you live in it, and feel it all around you. Laszlo Thoth did exactly what the Egyptian Thoth did. He kept a record of truth, making sure that the world doesn't forget. Now, let's go back to that powerful ending at the exhibition. This is the moment where everything comes together. Laszlo is being celebrated, finally recognized for his work. But the real shock comes when we learn that the buildings are not just beautiful, cold concrete designs. They include hidden elements inspired by concentration camps, the very places of war horror he survived. This is a deep and emotional twist. It means that all along, Thoth has been building monuments to suffering. His art was never about fame or success. It was always about memory, about telling the truth in a quiet but permanent way. This moment mirrors the Egyptian god Thoth's role as the god of judgment. He made judgments among the souls and gods, while Laszlo's architecture became a form of judgment of history itself. Another similarity between these two is how they consider their work as a sacred duty. In Egyptian mythology, Thoth wasn't just about writing, he was also connected to time, art, balance, and the sacred measurements. He helped design temples, write holy text, and the shape of the universe. And what is architecture if not sacred design? Laszlo's work in the Brutalist is deeply spiritual, even if it looks cold on the surface. Each wall, hall hold meaning. His buildings become sacred spaces. They are places where memory lives on. And just like the Egyptian Thoth helps shape the spiritual order of the universe, Laszlo helps shape our emotional understanding of history. He builds not just for the people to live in, but for people to remember. In conclusion, Laszlo Thoth and the Egyptian god Thoth share deep thematic parallels, particularly in how they use creativity to transform suffering into meaning. Laszlo's structures stand as permanent reminders of trauma in the same way that Egyptian Thoth preserved cosmic order through writing. Laszlo Thoth indirectly carves memory into stone, becoming a modern, quiet god of memory whose sacred spaces turn pain into enduring testimony. We can say The Brutalist isn't an easy movie. It's 3 hours long and doesn't explain everything. It's slow, it expects you to feel, to observe, and to think. But if you do, you'll find something truly deep. It's a film that feels like a poem made of concrete. It's heavy, both visually and emotionally. The film received a lot of praise from critics for the bold style and emotional weight. Some viewers found it hard to follow, but many agree that it's a special kind of film, one that stays with you. And if you look closely, you'll see that it might just be telling a story of an ancient god, walking among us again. So, what do you think? Is Laszlo Thoth just a silent architect with a dark past? Or is he something more, a modern Thoth, carving memory into the world so we don't forget? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.